I hope you can see the screen. Let me do this section. I can't exactly remember whether we did this section. All right. I hope you can hear me. Shall we go through this question, please? So these are a few questions on frauds, right? Because we had a unit on fraud. If you cannot hear me, if you cannot see the note on the screen, questions, please let me know. So can you go through the first question, 74? The course of their work, internal auditors must be alert for fraud. It means if there are any fraud indicators, we must be on the alert to detect those fraud indicators. We might not be able to detect fraud, but we can detect fraud indicators. Another form of the white collar crime. The important characteristics that distinguishes fraud from other varieties of white collar crime is A. Because when you look at the definition of fraud, there's always deceit, an element of deception. Someone is trying to deceive someone. Then there's an element of concealment. Whoever who carries out fraud wants to hide it. So a lot of action is taken to hide it, through creation of supporting documents, altering supporting documents. It's concealment. That's why it's difficult to detect fraud. And then always there is a violation of trust also. You trust that the cashier will I mean, you have a element of trust on someone that they will do their work properly, that the assets that they are entrusted with will not be misused, but they go and violate that trust, right? So all these things are there when it comes to a fraud: deception, concealment, and violation of trust. Okay. But what you remember, there is no threat of violence or physical force, right? There is no threat of violence or physical force. Can you look at question 75? Which of the following wrongful acts committed by an employee constitutes fraud? That would be embezzlement. Embezzlement is like stealing something when you're entrusted with it. Cashier stealing cash. Cash is entrusted with the cashier, right? And the cashier steals. Assault, harassment, and libel are not really frauds. Okay. Shall we look at question number 77? One factor that distinguishes fraud from other employee crimes is that fraud involves what? Fraud involves deception,
Deception.
intentional deception. Personal gain for the perpetrator could be collusion with a party outside the organization, could be malicious motives, could be. So all could. What is the answer here? What do you think? Can you just think and put
So,
something in the chat? Huh?
answer
Let's
A,
ask it.
intentional deception.
Right. I just think that is the answer. Now here, personal gain for the perpetrator, what it means is sometimes when frauds are committed, the benefit does not come to the perpetrator. If I pass a journal entry which increases profits of the company, I may not get a benefit, but I perform a crime. But who gets the benefit? The organization gets the benefit, right? Now, an employer fraud, collusion. No. Sometimes there can be collusion, sometimes there is no collusion. But deception is always there. Personal gain is not always there. Collusion is not always there. Malicious motives is something a little. Can we go through question number 79?
Answer D.
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 Yeah. This control is the principal means of preventing fraud. Management in turn is primarily responsible for establishing and maintenance of control. Management, not directors, because management is primarily responsible. Directors have an oversight role. Internal auditors are primarily responsible for preventing fraud by doing what? Evaluating. Yeah, what we do is we assist the management in maintaining effective internal controls. We assist. How we assist is we examine and evaluate whether the internal controls that are there are adequate, are they effective. That's what we look at the internal control design. We check samples to see whether they are operating effective. That's what we do. So our job is one of examining and evaluate. We don't as internal auditors establish and maintain. That is management's responsibility. Internal auditors also should assess the operating effectiveness of fraud-related communication systems and practices. Yeah, so fraud-related training. Is everyone aware about the anti-fraud policy in the organization? Is everyone aware about what fraud is, what fraud indicators are, what are the controls that are there for preventing and detecting fraud? Are they aware of it? So that is training provided on fraud, things like that. So there must be good communication also, otherwise no point. Question number 81.
D.
Mm, internal audit activity is responsibility for preventing fraud. Is to what?
Evaluating
Isn't
the
it?
system
Isn't
of
it C?
Yeah, see,
Yeah, we evaluate. No, we don't exercise. We evaluate. We don't establish. We don't maintain. We help to maintain effective intelligence. එහෙම තිබ්බනම් then it's all right. We don't establish or implement controls. We evaluate. Evaluate, examine. That's what. Hmm. And let's look at question number 82. So, D.
Yeah,
Yeah,
D.
so same thing. No? When we evaluate the adequacy and effectiveness, we can't just evaluate. We have to consider what? Risk. The risk the control is expected to mitigate. Whenever we evaluate controls, it's always against a risk and an objective. We have to go back. No point just evaluating a control in a vacuum, right? So all this, I think, are more or less questions on the same lines. Can we look at this 87? Oh, it's on this. We'll avoid that. You need a calculator for that. Okay. Question number 88.
Answer A.
Answer A. Yeah. No, interlight are more like properties. Change the record. Yeah. Interrogation of fraud perpetrators, we don't do. That's for forensic auditors or investigators. Develop internal controls is also wrong. We don't
Excellent.
develop. Yeah, we don't develop. We only review. Document. Documenting is also not done by us. Remember that. We shouldn't be documenting things. Question number 90.
Does that have any possible?
When an internal auditor identifies multiple factors that have been linked with the possible fraudulent conditions and suspects that fraud has taken, the auditor should. What is the answer here?
C or D.
I think it's D, no? If we suspect fraud, we should do more tests. C. Extent test to determine extent fraud performed after the fraud has in fact been determined, not suspected. How about when an internal auditor responds to identify value fraud indicator, deciding whether any additional action in the investigation should be recommended. Yeah. Okay. So recommending an when an internal auditor identifies multiple factors that have been linked to the possible fraudulent condition and suspects that fraud has taken place. So I suppose the point he suspects, he has already carried out his extended tests. You do something, you find something is wrong, then you extend your tests, and then you think, okay, fraud has taken place. So at that point, I suppose what you can do is recommend an investigation. But then again, I think usually what we do is we will immediately report it to the senior management. So after sufficient investigation has been done, so not really. Here, in practical terms, what happens is when we do an internal audit, we see that there are multiple indicators of fraud. So if we see multiple indicators of fraud, what generally happens is we might extend our tests a little more. Then we kind of confirm, yes, Methana, there is something wrong. Then when that happens, we don't immediately recommend an investigation because it's outside our purview. We go ahead and inform it to the senior management and the board. Senior and the management and the board, when you meet them, they might ask what needs to be done. Then we might recommend an investigation. So it's a little complicated than this. It's not as straightforward. So here it says suspects that fraud has taken place. So generally when you suspect fraud has taken place, naturally you want to recommend an investigation, you have to immediately report it to the senior because you are not the investigator and you can't do investigations. So we have to obviously what would happen is we immediately report it to the senior management and then recommend an investigation to them. But here what they're saying is start the investigation. Here, if you look at the answer, they say start the investigation and establish reasonable certainty that significant fraud has occurred. So here, the examiner's line of thinking is a little different. You see multiple indicators, don't stop there, extend your tests or whatever, and establish the fact that yes, fraud has occurred. Once you establish that fraud has actually occurred, then you go and tell the board. So we cannot recommend an investigation, so it's a little complicated. It's a little complicated because sometimes as internal auditors, when we do fraud, to see whether a fraud has occurred, we have to do an investigation. But do we launch an investigation on our own? We don't do that. We may do a kind of a preliminary inquiry. If there are indicators of fraud, we wipe our hands off it and we tell the management there is something like this. There are multiple indicators. Explanations given by the management don't seem to be reasonable. It's like we do a cash count. There is a variance. Then we check a few more, extend the tests and check a few more transactions. When there are shortages, then we inform the senior management, who in turn we might recommend an investigation to them, inform and recommend an investigation, and then they might tell us to do the investigation. But here, the only issue I have with the question is they are telling us to do a sufficient investigation. So ideally, we should not be doing investigations. We can extend our tests and perhaps even confirm that a fraud has taken place. If we are lucky, we might be able to say, but then again, to confirm whether a fraud has taken place, we have to establish that the fraudster has done it intentionally. How do we do that? So it's not easy. So there, it's a little tricky question. But in the exam, you won't get it so complicated. But just think it out carefully and see. Because here they are saying, yeah, the auditor should do a sufficient investigation and then identify a fraud has taken place and then do something. Ideally, in the real world, we don't do it. Because doing an investigation is a huge thing. Unless you do a kind of a preliminary internal audit, but you extend the audit and check deeper and identify, more anomalies. But you can't determine whether a fraud has taken place without doing a fraud investigation, right? Because there are a lot of cases where there is misconduct in offices, there are mistakes, but to say it is a fraud, you have to actually go and prove through multiple transactions, through alterations to documents, through destruction of documents that was intentionally done to benefit a certain person or the company. So it's a bigger road. It's a fine line. Yeah? Can we look at question number 92? Question number 92. An internal auditor's field work an internal auditor's field work. What is the question? What are we to see? You don't go to the board directly, yeah? So D is out. Yeah, this one suspects fellow workers, not really, you don't go and disclose all this to the fellow worker. Confronting the suspect also immediately is not done, Decide whether to recommend an investigation. Yeah, I suppose that seems the most reasonable anyway. Let's see. Yeah, workers may also be involved. There may be collusion. Can you see? The interlocutor should avoid confronting suspects. So here our job is to evaluate fraud indicators and decide whether any additional action is necessary in terms of further testing. And based on that further testing, you see whether an investigation should be recommended. So it's not up to you to do an investigation. Question number 93. A. Okay, let's see. West describes an auditor's responsibility after noting some indicators of fraud. Expand activity whether the investigation is warranted. It's like that, no? You can report the possibility of fraud and ask how to proceed. Yeah. So what they say is when you're an internal auditor and there are fraud indicated, just expand your sample. Just expand your sample. Get the more information. And then go to the management and tell expanding activities is very important. Right. And decide, yes. So when you go to the management, you have to go to the management with a recommendation to whether do an investigation or not. Huh? Hmm. Can you say you only go to the senior management when you determine that the indicators of fraud are sufficient to recommend an investigation? So you don't do the investigation. That's what I'm saying. Don't do the investigation. Let's see whether based on the indicators of fraud, whether it is sufficient to recommend an investigation. So there are many indicators of fraud, then you will have to suggest. Question number 95. Uh, I also think it's unreasonable sales and production goals, and they might fraudulently try to increase sales by posting invoices and do something. No? Be unrealistically high sales targets. Question number 96. Can you go through that, please? What's the answer? Question number 96. C. D. Does not represent. No, does not represent. Many common red flags are also associated with situations in which no fraud. Yeah, so there can be red flag, but no fraud. That could be. Some red flags are difficult to quantify and to evaluate. Yes. Red flag by its nature is vague. Red flags do not mean there is fraud for sure. And just because you see a red flag, you cannot quantify. Red flag information is not gathered as a normal part of an engagement. Yeah, so as an internal auditor, we don't perform procedures specifically to gather red flag information. But through the procedures we carry out, if there are any red flags, we should be able to detect it. We must be alert to the possibility of red flags existing. Which of the following is most likely to be considered an indication of possible fraud? In companies where there is a rapid turnover, that is the indication of fraud. D, I think. Yeah. People do not like to work for fraudulent bosses. They don't like to work in organizations where fraud takes place. They don't want to be part of frauds. They don't want to be part of investigations. Can you read this? Can you read this fact pattern? I mean, there are so many questions from that. Let's take a little time and read.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Let's go into the question. What is John was trusted completely? And we learned that there are different types of symptoms, situation and document, opportunity to commit physical symptoms.
So
What is that?
just now part of the
Huh?
letter what you hide previously.
Now, this part.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can read that part also. So this is about the fraud triangle, no? And symptoms, type of symptoms.
Okay.
Okay. John was trusted completely. When you trust someone, that gives the opportunity to commit fraud. Even in Sri Lanka or wherever, why frauds are so prevalent is because there is too much of trust. When you trust someone, you don't check their work, you think they will not carry out fraud. So that gives the fraudster an opportunity to do because he knows my boss trusts me. Even if a bank rec is being given, he knows my boss will sign it, authorize it without properly checking it. So that's the point there. Let's go to the second one. Number two, Randy was always handling the most urgent. And he was always handling the most urgent problem. And this is the most urgent problem. Crisis management. What is that?
Situational pressure.
Yeah, it's situational opportunity to commit also. No? Crisis management. It's an example of situational pressure also, but it gives the opportunity. I can remember once we did a fraud examination and always the person who played out through payments brought those fraudulent checks at 4:25 or 4:27. The boss leaves at 4:30 because bought at the very last minute. And there was a sense of urgency because the cost is going, so boss also didn't check it. It was the last check to sign. Pata 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 he signs. So that gave an opportunity to commit the fraud. Difficulties with personal financial problems. Always having financial problems. Fraudsters steal with always there is
Situational
some
pressure.
pressure. There is a pressure, motivation. Now in this, the motivation or the pressure is financial difficulties. So that looks like a situational pressure to me. Yeah, B. Can you see if you're
So in the previous question, 101, actually, Randy was always handling the most urgent work, but he was not the one who did the fraud, no? So is this explanation correct?
I look at it again. Yes, I did read the full question.
And
Randy
is the
decided to
owner.
Randy is the owner. So when the owner is always busy, that gives an opportunity to those below him to commit the fraud. Randy decided to expand the business and open several. Randy was always handling the most urgent problem. Crisis management is what is probably termed. John assisted with the problems when his duties allowed him time. Although successful at all, John had difficulties, so John assisted. So when your boss is always running around, always pressured, that gives an opportunity to commit the fraud. Opportunity to ones below. If you are the finance manager and you're always busy running around, handling urgent work, no time for other things, then you're always not focused. So that gives an opportunity for those subordinates to do something. I think that's the thinking pattern of the examining. You also have a point. Number 4, that he contributed much more. Contributed to what?
Rationalization.
Huh?
Rationalization.
It's like employee stealing, thinking, I'm underpaid. I do a lot of work. I'm entitled to. So if I steal, it's okay. I contribute more. I deserve more. If I don't, if I'm not paid, I'll steal it. He made the books balance. These are symptoms now. When frauds happen, there are symptoms. He made the books balance. What is that? What sort of symptom is that?
Document.
Looks like that. Yeah. Okay. He also joined an expensive country club. That
Lifestyle sense.
lifestyle. No? Yeah, that's what I also think. Yeah. John's family observed that he was often argumentative.
Behavioral.
Yeah. C. Yeah, behavior. A drastic change in employees' behavior. So these are okay. Then you look at question number 108. Which of the following factors have not been associated, not associated? If there is performance-based rewards, yeah, people may sometimes be carrying out frauds related to, getting commissions, increasing sales fraudulently. But domineering management also we see fraud. Sometimes the culture is not right. Management, regular comparison of actual results with budgets that happens in anyone. It's not associated, I think, with fraud. No. Management preoccupation with financial performance will lead to financial statement fraud. They're always focusing on enhancing the P&L, enhancing profits, and all that. Question number 110. B. B. A manager appears to be, which of the following would indicate that fraud is taking place. A manager appears to be living a life that is in excess of what he could be provided. Yeah, I look like that. No, me also it looks like. Let's see.
E,
Huh?
D,
D. Oh, yeah. Yeah, D. So look at
all
this again.
these.
All are correct. There is
Yeah.
no documentation. Yeah, so no document. These are documentation simple. No? Sometimes
Yeah.
when you go to check payments, no destruction of documents, missing supporting document, that's an indicator. No? Of fraud. Lifestyle in excess is also indicator of fraud. The control can best be this is a very loose control. It means,
Opportunity.
however, this attitude is justified. Yeah, yeah, the creativity. Yeah. So some companies, when we go to them, they say, no, 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 we have empowered employees, we trust them, we have to empower them, we have to delegate authority. And the importance of internal controls is not articulated properly, or management is like anti-control, everyone can do anything we trust. So it's places like that is uh, that could be there.
So the
So
first
he,
one, is it related to the marketing department? Because
so marketing
vendor,
expenses, no? Yeah, so we are correct. Generally, marketing expenses will be recommended with an invoice and it will go to the finance department to raise the vouchers. So I think they have not thought to that extent. But let's assume what they mean is that for very large marketing related expenses, to a new marketing vendor, new supplier, new advertiser, whoever. And there are no supporting documents. So it's a fraud indicator. It's a fraud indicator for any fraud in any department.
okay, sir.
Yeah. Hundred 113, shall we go through 113?
D.
D. Yeah. People who commit frauds never go on leave. Huh? That's why in banks you have this, 5 to 7 days mandatory leave. During that time you detect frauds. You ask a question, they are very defensive, aggressive. They are annoyed with auditor. These are all problems. Other than 15. Which one reduces this fictitious inventory has been recorded?
B.
So what is the
Answer B.
total asset turnover? What is asset turnover?
Uh,
Asset turnover is what? What upon what?
Turnover divided by asset.
Yeah, no.
So it will
So when you say
decrease
asset,
when asset
it's
increase.
when you say asset, it's inventory. They are looking at inventory.
It including inventory.
Yeah. So assets divide by inventory. If assets are inflated, let's say if there's fictitious assets, then what does that mean? There are
It's higher,
fictitious assets,
the
right?
higher
Then,
denominate, higher
yeah,
denominate.
the figure at the top, which is asset. So asset turnover ratio, what is at the top?
Turnover.
Turnover, no?
Yeah, turnover divided by asset.
Turnover divided by asset.
So it denominator
So
increases,
if the assets increase, the bottom figure increases, then the ratio goes down.
decrease.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's B. Turnover TO divide by assets. Assets without putting assets, let's put inventory. Then this inventory is in assets. So if inventory increases, then your ratio goes down. All right, let's look at one more question from this section and go to the next one. The most common motivation for management fraud is the existence of what? Management fraud means the people at the top. Common motivation for management fraud. What do you think? Financial pressures on the organization. Weird. Senior management is more involved in financial statement fraud than any other. So those are some of the questions on what you call fraud. Can you look at some questions on ERM? Look at question 36. Look at this. As the management of risk. CRO, of course, is a part of the management. Risk is best left with the management. No? Senior management has an oversight role. Actually, directors have an oversight role. Very tricky question. CAE should not be accountable for management functions. Share the management of risk with chief auditor. CAE internal auditor can't be managing risk. That responsibility cannot be monitors. Monitors risk as parts of monitoring risk is okay. That's what the CR does. No? Look at banks also, they come to the board and give their opinion on how risks are monitored and what are the KR. So D seems to be the correct answer. Look at question number 37. Give me 2 minutes. Huh? Till then you read question 37. D. Yeah. Let's look at this. Go down. C. Enterprises management guarantees no. Nothing guarantees that objectives will be achieved. Only reasonable assurance is provided. Requires establishment of risk and control activities by internal auditors. Enterprise requires establishment of risk and control activities by internal auditors. Not only by internal, by the management, by the directors, by the management, by everyone, no? Any party. Involves identification of events with negative impacts on organizational objectives. Yes. He seems right.
It's so.
Right? Huh?
Yeah, both are okay. No? D.
Let's say D includes selection of the best risk response. No. Best risk response for the organization. Why is D wrong? Let's go down. And is concerned with selecting not the best, but the risk response that falls within the. Can you see? Yeah, so in a way, someone could. The idea is that the inherent risk through a control converts that it brings down the inherent risk to residual risk. And that residual risk must be within the risk appetite of the organization. So any risk response that brings a risk response within the organization's risk appetite is sufficient. That again is debatable. So the best risk response sometimes may not be the most, will take out the risk completely. That also because we know that you have to take risks to make profits. No, if you're risk averse totally, then you can't. There is no reward. So it's debatable. So one would say, yes, it's about, someone would say, yes, we, through risk management, we select the best risk response. Yeah, best risk response, not to bring down the residual risk to zero, but the best risk response that will bring the risk down to within the appetite. So tolerance level, 38, bearable level. Bearable level is the appetite. Tolerance is higher than the appetite. Remember that. Tolerance is more. And appetite is generally, you look at a portfolio for many risks. Tolerance is always set for each individual risk. Small, and tolerance is always higher than the appetite. Your appetite could be of an NPA in a bank, your appetite might be 10, NPA 10, but you can tolerate maybe up to 20 and non-performing advances. Many organizations use electronic fund transfers to pay their suppliers instead of issuing checks. Regarding the risks associated with issuing checks, which of the following risk management techniques does this represent? Regarding the risks associated with many organizations use electronic fund transfer to pay their suppliers instead of issuing checks. Regarding the risks associated with issuing checks, which of the following does it represent? So when you issue checks, they think frauds can happen. So they switch to electronic fund transfers. So are they controlling the risk, accepting, transferring, or avoiding?
Avoiding.
Yeah, no, looks like that. Let's see. Yeah, avoiding. You're completely stopping an activity, stopping an event. It is avoided. What is residual risk? Risk that is not managed. Yes, that is the remaining risk. That is the risk that is not managed. That's the remaining risk. That's true. Which is the following? Equality fast. Which of the following is a factor affecting risk? New personnel, new systems, rapid growth. All can affect risk. Systems, new technologies. I think it's D. Yes. Now the order. Course of framework, an ERM framework, the order. Which of the following? Just give me a second. I have to get my chargers.
We can't hear you.
Sorry. In this internal environment is not a component. No. Here, external environment is also not a component. This response to opportunity is also not a component. Others are. The COSO ERM framework, you have to know what the components are. You want to see? Should I show you the components? Yeah, answer it. So if I just get this, yeah, these are the components. Objective setting, event identification, risk assessment, risk response, control activities, information and communication, monitoring. Those are the ones. Which of the following sorry. I don't know this. I'll share this again. Hold on. All right. I hope you can see the questions. Question 42. Which of the following control models is fully incorporated into the broader integrated framework enterprises? Course, or no? Is it? We know that there is a COSO ERM framework, and we know there is a ISO 31000 framework. Yeah. What does COSO stand for? Committee of Sponsoring Organizations. What is the name of the ERM framework? It's called ERM Integrated Framework. You put that here to know us. COBIT is a framework related to what? IT controls, control objectives. Information technology or related to information technology. Limitations of enterprises management may arise from what? E. E. Limitation of enterprise. What are the answers about? Look at that. The limitations of ERM are the same as those for controls. They arise with the possibility of faulty human judgment, cost benefit consider simple errors, mistakes, collusion, management approach. 44. Can you check 44?
Answer D. D.
Management considers risk appetite for all of the following except. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. D. Yeah. So according to the course of framework, risk appetite should be considered in those three areas. Let's read the answer, please. Inherent risk is what? Inherent risk. The answer B. Okay, so what is the answer for this? Inherent risk is what? The easy one. The easy one. Yeah, D, correct. Okay, before you put in any controls, there is inherent risk. And the management has not taken any action to reduce. Inherent risk is the kind of the raw 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 risk, before you do anything that risky, that is the risk that you try to bring it down and keep within the residual risk levels. Internal auditors are assessing the risk of fraud involving senior management. An impact factor is, what is that? An impact factor, potential override of internal controls. Internal auditors are assessing the risk of fraud is an impact factor. So these are all risks apparently. Override of control, inadequacy of control, these are all risks. Non-retention of customers. These are the risk. For example, the consequence of fraud may include direct financial loss and harm to its reputation, which in turn may lead, right. So if there are frauds in an organization, you might not be able to retain customers because customers also do not want to buy stuff from organizations where frauds are taking place.
But here's a fraud not yet discovered, no? So, sir, we can't hear you. No, it's still lagging. Not yet. Still lagging. Not yet, sir. No.
No. Wait, I'll change my
No,
Wi-Fi.
now
Hold on.
okay.
Now okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear now?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. No, can you hear no?
Yeah.
Right. So here what happens is when you do a risk assessment, you identify the risk and you have to also evaluate the risk in terms of impact and likelihood. So
Yeah.
here what they are saying is a possible impact of a risk that you have identified during a risk. So if there is a risk of fraud, let's say in some way, then the impact of that would be loss of customer goodwill. So it's an impact factor. That's what they're trying to say.
Okay.
So I think you have to think of it in that line. Yeah. 47.
Yes.
Which risk response reflects a change from acceptance to sharing?
B.
Which risk response reflects a change from accept to sharing? So insurance is always sharing, no?
Yeah.
What are the other ways of sharing?
Joint
What are the other
venture.
ways of sharing?
Joint
Yeah.
ventures.
Yeah, joint ventures. Yeah. Correct. 48. Question number 48.
Answer A.
Yeah,
Answer A.
management has primary responsibility, no? Internally does not have an oversight role. Board of
Yeah.
directors has an
Board of.
oversight. The board provides assurance? No, board doesn't provide assurance. Internal audit activity provides assurance about whether the ERM process are effective. The chief audit executive should serve as risk officer. No. We don't serve as risk officer. No, then
Independent.
what you call independence is impaired. So we should say it's A. Yeah. Yeah. So it's correct. 49. Question number 49.
C.
Which of the
C.
following is closer to traditional risk management instead of enterprise risk?
C. Yes.
Let's look at the answer in the C. Yeah, so you are correct. C. The enterprise risk management process for attempts to approach an organization as a whole instead of which of the following is closely traditional. Yeah, in traditional only you focus in a kind of a function wise. Now, if you look at the ERM frameworks, they are organization wise, enterprise wide, what else do they say? Inclusive, enterprise wide, holistic approach, all that. What is this? Question number 50. Who has the ultimate ownership? Chief executive. No, how do these people? So if the word board of directors is there, sometimes you have to select board of directors. But they are ultimately responsible for managing risks. They have oversight role, but if that is not there, then it will be CEO. 51.
B.
According to course of which of the following components of enterprise management addresses and integrity and ethical values? Internal environment. It's a control environment. Would have been the ideal word. Control environment. So in the control environment assessment, we usually look at the internal environment. So that's okay. 53. Question number 53. B. Yeah. Question number 53.
D.
What did you say?
D. Yeah.
D. Yeah. We read something like that, no? Before also.
Yeah.
Risk management processes. Unit 3. Okay, go through this question.
Process. B assurance.
Uh,
B.
Yeah. Yeah, we provide assurance. No?
I'll say
Primary reason that a bank would maintain a separate compliance function is to better manage perceived high risks. The compliance function always responds to the CEO. Remember that. Just go to the internet and study who should the chief compliance officer report to. Is it now in banks and finance companies? Sometimes it is to the IRMC, Integrated Risk Management Committee. So it's very interesting to note who should the chief compliance officer report to, right? What would be the answer that you get on the internet? You will say that they report to the CEO. Huh? But in banks, finance companies, you have a line to the BIRMC also, IRMC. Right, IRMC also. So firing the chief compliance officer, firing, all that will be done by the Integrated Risk Management Committee. That slight independence like the CIA, Chief Internal Auditor, must be maintained. But on a day-to-day basis, it has to be the CEO. So CEO, it's more CEO, I think, than the board committee. Which of the following, last question. Which of the following goals set risk management strategies at the optimal level? Yeah, I think it would be maximize shareholder value. That is the target. Yes. Can you read answer D? All right, so we'll stop with that for today. Next week, I have a small issue. I have an AGM, so I won't be able to do the class. I'll see whether Indika can do a few questions with you all in a different area next week. So we have maximum 2 more classes or 3 more maximum. So we'll see. Yeah, we are covered now. At least 60% of the questions of different units. We have about 2-3 more units to do. All right. So I'll see you then, not next week, the week after, but next week, possible, I will try to have Indika do a class, or we might on next Thursday, or we might change the date and do it on another day. And then I can do the class. So I'll let you know. We'll put up something on the WhatsApp. Good night.
good night. Good night, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Good night.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Good night.